Good morning. I'm here with Dan Osman, candidate for Overland Park City Council Ward 4. On behalf of the Johnson County Public Policy Council, thank you, Dan, for being here today.
Thank you.
The Johnson County Public Policy Council is made up of 10 chambers of commerce in Johnson County. Our goal is to provide information about public policy issues impacting area businesses. Dan, you ready to get started?
Yes, I am.
In regard to economic development, it has been argued that incentives aren't necessary because development will occur naturally without them being offered. What is your opinion?
So, I work with developers every day on contract compliance issues, not necessarily on their incentives, but just on the back end, making sure that they adhere to all their contract compliance issues. And I find that developers will adhere to their contracts. They want to comply with their contracts, but the question is, how strict are we making it? And I don't think that Overland Park is making the contracts strict enough for the developers to adhere to, and that's the real problem. Now, incentives can be good and they can be useful, but only if there's a legitimate need for them, only if there is a need that the system is blighted, the area is blighted, and only a public-private partnership that's good for the citizens of Overland Park work to make it happen. That's the only way. So how do we determine this? First, we need an independent third-party analysis to run through all the developers' numbers to make sure that they make sense for Overland Park. Second, we need a blight analysis that is paid for by the developers but actually answers to the city of Overland Park so that they can give us the correct answers as to whether this particular area is something that needs incentives in the first place. Look, we want to fix blight, but this is not a tax giveaway to the developers, and it's never going to be at the expense of Overland Park residents. So I'm here to make sure that we don't mismanage our taxes and incentives.
What is your opinion on what is commonly referred to as dark store theory, and what do you think Overland Park should be doing today, if anything, to prepare for rulings that favor the plaintiffs?
So, first, let me explain a little bit about the dark store theory for those that may not understand. The dark store theory is basically this theory that's running through the courts right now, where these big box stores like Walmart, Best Buy, Lowe's are trying to say that the current tax rate is unacceptable. The best and highest use is an unacceptable level for their tax rate. Instead, they should be taxed at basically as if their store was shuttered. And it's working in 50% or so of the cases, more so in Kansas, where you are having, if it continues to succeed, it's going to be a huge detriment to the tax rate of Overland Park. So what can we do to combat it? I look at a three-pronged approach. First is judicial. We need to work through the courts and appeal this as far as we can and work with other municipalities that are trying to appeal these issues through the courts. The second is legislative. We need to work with the Kansas legislature to make sure we're amending our tax codes so that this type of a theory fails. It is failing in other states, and we need to emulate that model so that we don't have that continued tax burden going forward. And third is more the executive. So we as city council need to, when I get in, work with the mayor, work with the budget office, and work with the city manager to make sure that we are doing everything necessary to prepare a couple years down the line when something catastrophic could happen.
Housing affordability is addressed in Forward OP, and it's a topic of considerable discussion among employers. What do you think the city of Overland Park should be doing to address this problem?
So we look at cities like Seattle, we look at cities like Los Angeles, and they have a huge boom in housing costs. They also have a huge boom in homeless population, and I don't want that to happen in Overland Park. A city thrives when the people inside the city thrive. Now, there are lots of minimum wage jobs and lots of low-skilled jobs in Overland Park. And both are important, and both are absolutely necessary for the well-being and well-maintaining system that is Overland Park. So what happens when the people that are in those jobs can't afford to live in Overland Park? How far are they willing to travel? how easy is it going to be for the business owners to find people to work for them? We have to stop that. We have to make sure that there's affordable housing options. Now, how do we do that? There were previous questions about tax incentives, and there were previous questions about the dark store theory. If we want more stringent standards, we need more stringent standards in contract language in our development agreements. Lots of other cities have affordable housing options as part of their development agreement. 10%, 15%, 20% of their housing it has to be with affordable housing. We control the purse strings with the developers, so let's enforce that and not just give it away, but use it for something that serves Overland Park.
In the short term, it appears we can keep our mill levy unchanged to meet current budget obligations. However, sluggish sales tax collections and increased demands on infrastructure from growth could necessitate a change. What are your thoughts on our current budget and the outlook for the future?
Okay. So maybe this is me just being naive, but I think that when somebody doesn't know something, they should just admit that they don't know it and then work to educate themselves on what it is and how to make it better. So, I've been to budget meetings. I've seen the $300 million budget and the breakdown for next year, but I can't sit here today looking in from the outside and pretend to tell you that I know the intricacies of how the Overland Park budget is structured and what changes, what works, what doesn't work, what changes need to be made. That's not somebody that you don't want somebody in office that is going to be that rash in their decision making that thinks that they know all the answers before getting the answers. What I promise is this: when I get elected, I'm going to work with the city manager and the budget office, and I'm going to review the budget from top to bottom. Next year, I want to be able to have those intelligent conversations at the start of the budget hearings so that we can work together to make those hard decisions as we come upon next year's budget.
The governors of Kansas and Missouri have recently forged a truce in the so-called economic border war. Do you support their actions, and what impact do you believe their agreement will have on Overland Park?
Yes. So recent estimates on the border war is that it's cost about $330 million between Kansas and Missouri. And for what? No new net jobs, no new net people, no new net companies. It's just been cannibalism all the way down. We take a look at just a couple of days ago, the last in the train of the border war. Waddell and Reed recently had I think it was a $56 million announcement that they're going to be leaving Overland Park. That is how the border war affects Overland Park, to the tune of $56 million being sold for them to go somewhere else. Look, I want this truce to hold. I want Overland Park to expand its resources looking outward beyond the metro. Our goal here is to grow, not to steal.
And as we wrap up, tell us why you're seeking public office. What do you believe distinguishes you most from your opponent in this race, making you best suited to serve?
So, I've always taken an interest in the community that I've lived in, and I've always wanted to make it better. I served for 6 years on a school board, and during that time I was the only person that had monthly newsletters to explain what was going on in the school board. I was the only person that held monthly meetings to meet with the constituents and actually listen and address their concerns. And I think that that's what's necessary. You represent the population that you serve, and you have to listen to them. So after stepping down from that, I really thought that I would take a break for a while. But this last year, I heard from so many different people coming to me with the same complaint. Their voices weren't being heard. They would go to their current city council member, and their complaints would fall on deaf ears. They would go to city council meetings to topics that they were being addressed at the meeting, and they couldn't stand up to speak on those issues. They weren't being allowed that opportunity. That's not how you serve the population that you represent, and I promise to do better than that. I mean, that's the simple takeaway here. You listen to the population. All the other topics that we've discussed today can be worked through by just listening to what the problems are and working together to address them. And that's what I want to do. So I hope that people support me in the upcoming November 5th election. And if they want to learn more, they can go to osmanforop.com to help learn more. And that's why I'm running. Thank you very much.
Well, Dan, thank you for joining us, and we wish you the best of luck with your election.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time.